got very good arms.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and something I imagine all of you never expected would happen, and certainly something I never expected to happen. Really, I'm gonna defend Tom King here today because I don't know. I think he got a raw deal of this. I guess there was the Brian Bolland special cover for the first issue of Rorschach came out. There was a comic book letterer named Jim Campbell, took exception to the lettering on that, but he didn't stop there, folks. He goes in and full on decimates Tom King and said some not very nice things about him on Twitter. I believe those tweets have been deleted. I'm almost certain that they've been deleted. I couldn't find them, but we do have the information right here. It was in an article from bleedingcool.com. And I'm going to kind of go over it. And there's been a long-standing rivalry or issue with Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, and DC Comics regarding the Watchmen. As far as they think it's their creation and they should have some input on what DC Comics does with it. And as far as DC Comics is concerned, with the agreement that they have, they can do whatever they want with it as long as they have it in print. And that's the way I kind of understand it. And that is kind of why Alan Moore hates the comic industry so much. And yeah, I do think he has a point there. Actually, I think he has a damn good point. I think Dave Gibbons has a damn good point. The comic industry really it has a nasty, nasty legacy of the way it treats some of its stalwart kind of creators that have really done things for the industry. You think about the way Bill Finger was treated, the way that Schuster was treated, the way that they kind of just kicked Steve Ditko to the curb just, over a difference of like political opinions. Obviously the word is he was an odd bird, but he contributed something special to the entire comic book industry. He is kind of the driving force behind a lot about what we love about Spider-Man. Obviously, they did change some of it later on. I think beginning with issue 100, when they started getting some different creative influences on there. But he's had a lot to do with the success of Spider-Man. Just the look of Spider-Man has a lot to do with the success of that character, and Steve Ditko played a huge part in that. And it feels like Marvel Comics would rather you not even know it. They could kind of care less. So there's just like a really weird history with the comic book industry and the way that they treat creators. A lot of times, when you kind of think of their creations, like there's just some of the stuff that you see people doing today. When you think about Captain America, created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, obviously Jewish men. And then, later on, they were already passed. Obviously, they didn't consult them when they did it. But to turn a character like Captain America into like a Nazi, essentially, it's just so weird. It just goes against everything that those men had put into that character and what they intended him to be. But Marvel could care less. They've obviously showed that they've changed the character to be almost beyond recognition. I just covered it on the channel a few days ago. So while I am very sympathetic to what Jim Campbell is saying here, and I'm exceptionally sympathetic to Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons and the way they feel about this, but I don't think it's Tom King's fault. This isn't the first time that DC Comics has gone and done something with the Watchmen. We've had before Watchmen. We had the Watchmen movie. We've had the Watchmen TV show. We had a Doomsday Clock. They've certainly done plenty with the Watchmen characters, and they're now in the DC universe. And I think that's weird. And I think Alan Moore's probably pretty pissed about it. And I think they probably should consult him. But I don't think it's Tom King's fault, and I don't think it's Jeff Johns' fault. And I don't even think it's Warner Brothers' fault. I think you can lay this one probably squarely on probably Jim Lee and Dan Didio and probably Bob Harris. To be completely honest, I'm sure that's when this new Rorschach series kind of came online. Although I'll take that. You can probably blame Warner Brothers. I mean, I'm sure when they brought DC Comics and brought them into the Warner fold, it was big. The Watchmen was probably a big part of that. It's generally considered to be the greatest comic book in the history of the world. Now, I disagree with that. I think it's a great comic book. I think it's fantastic. But I don't even think that one's Alan Moore's best comic book. I think Saga of the Swamp Thing is better. But that's just me. But let's get into some of these details about Jim Campbell. He's a comic book letterer, and he was upset when you look at this Rorschach cover. The eye here has the crossbars, and apparently when you're comic book lettering, the only time you use the crossbars are if it's like the word I, or if it's like the first letter. This is the way I kind of understand. Let's read. 2 words, they still managed to F up the lettering. The I and smile uses crossbar I, an I with the crossbar at the top and the bottom, which should only be used when lettering the word I as in oneself. Okay, only if it's the word I. Otherwise, you do not put the crossbars on it. It's just a line I, and that's why you should do it. So he's taking him to task for bad lettering on the cover. Whatever. He's a letterer. I'm sure it probably chaps his ass. I completely get it. But he does not stop there, folks. He this is what he says next. Oh, whatever. I'm going to curse in this. I'm sorry. If you don't like the cursing, I'm just going to read. I'm not going to sit there and try to sanitize the words. Also, fuck Tom King. Fuck Jorge Fornes and Dave Stewart. Fuck anyone who participates in the blatant IP theft by DC. If your paycheck is so important that you'll sanction this absolute robbery, fuck you. I think it's debatable that this is blatant IP theft. Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons had an agreement with DC Comics. I think if he could go back and if he had his druthers, he could go back in time, hindsight being 2020, he probably would not have done that. He probably would have self-published it. And to be completely honest, this is a lot of the reason that that Vertigo died. I know I've made videos on this, and yes, Andy Corey essentially was the final nail in the coffin when he brought in just terrible creators and terrible ideas for the relaunch of Vertigo. But the reason Vertigo was obsolete before that was creator rights. If Alan Moore wants to come to DC Comics and create a brand new slew of characters, obviously he did want to use some DC characters for Watchmen. They denied him. He had to create all new original characters. Those kind of should belong to them, and that's why a lot of people took their toys and they went over to Image Comics, or they've gone over to Dark Horse and Boom and things like that with the creator-owned work. And Vertigo's not a thing anymore because DC is absolute bullshit as far as creators' rights, as far as like television, movie, all those kind of rights, but also the rights to your character and what they're going to do with it. Now, I think the DC is probably legally allowed to do this. Probably, but I don't know that. You probably need a lawyer for this. But he goes on to kind of go into some more detail. He continues, to be clear, you sell your work on for hire. You sell your work on for work for hire. You know what to expect. But Watchmen wasn't work for hire. The reversion clause clearly implies that the work remained with Moore and Gibbons' copyright and that DC licensed it under specific circumstances. This is theft. That might be correct, but I don't think it's Tom King. I don't think that's Jorge Fornes, and I certainly don't think it's Dave Stewart. And then he continues on. The fanboy in me would kill to get a DC gig on any number of titles that I love, but they could offer me $50 a page, and I wouldn't touch this shit. Speaking about Rorschach, the thing is, I don't work for hire contracts, or I don't think work for hire contracts are inherently evil. Creators trade off risk for reward, but this isn't that. If the rights were supposed to revert to Moore and Gibbons after the work went out of print, then clearly the rights resided with them and were licensed to DC. The fact that DC has now folded Watchmen into their wholly owned universe is unquestionably an IP grab, which may be legal, but which is morally reprehensible. All right, he's got a point there. I think he's probably correct. I'm certain Moore has taken legal advice on this, and I'm sure the advice was, whatever the merits of your case, DC Warner have such deep pockets, they will bankrupt you long before you get anywhere near court. And that's one of the really shitty things. When you're going up against these big corporations, they can just like they can take the litigation and string it out so long that essentially you have to quit because you have no recourse unless unless you have an angel investor that wants to come in that believes in your cause so much that they will bankroll your litigation. Essentially you have no chance to ever win. And I think that's gross. I do think that's gross about our legal system. The little guy almost has no chance unless he would get such a massive, the risk reward, the reward is such a massive financial settlement or a financial reward from the court that someone's willing to go and work it for free until they get a portion of that, in which case I'm sure they take a large portion of it. So I do think it sucks that Moore probably would never get his day in court going against this if he actually wanted to litigate it. And that sadly is the state of the world. But if other creators did line up to help massive corporations fuck over other creators, well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I don't know, man. I get what he's saying. A part of me thinks that maybe he's probably correct there, but it isn't like Tom King is the first person that's doing anything with Watchmen. It's already been established. Jeff Johns has done stuff with Watchmen. The movie, you got the TV show, we got before Watchmen. Watchmen is something that DC Comics has been using. They've been writing new Watchmen stuff. I just think it's weird that you would put it on the feet of Tom King. Tom King has had some very big hits in comic books. I'm sure he wants good sales. I'm sure there are things in his contracts that says when you hit these sales numbers, you get these royalties, or if this story does well enough, it will be in reprint, and then he gets more royalties and things like this. Tom King, as much as I don't like him, and I don't like him, I think he's a bad writer. I think he ruins characters, and I'm sure he's going to ruin Rorschach. I'm certain of it. That's all he's done, since Vision, is take other people's work and kind of just destroy them. But he's able to sell, 55,000 issues of Strange Adventures, Adam Strange, not exactly a primetime character. Taking a character as well known as Rorschach from a property as well known as The Watchmen, I mean, what are his sales probably going to be? 100,000? At least 80,000 every issue, probably over 100,000. He's got a family to feed. Is it the nicest thing that he's kind of treading on Moore's territory that clearly pisses him off? He's not very happy. It clearly pisses Dave Gibbons off. Probably not, but somebody else is going to do it. I don't know. Am I wrong here to say that I don't think Jorge Fornes, I don't think Tom King, I don't think any of the creators, I don't think Dave Stewart has anything to do with it. Your issue is not with them, sir. Your issue is with DC Comics leadership, namely probably Jim Lee. Dan Didio's gone. Bob Harris are gone. And probably leadership at Warner Brothers. What's her name? Pam Lilford? I believe she's the liaison between the liaison between Warner Media and DC Comics. It's kind of like in charge that answers back to AT&T. Those are probably the people that you have an issue with. If Tom King was the first person, if for 10 years they've been trying to do a Watchmen comic book, they had done the movie, they did the TV show, but they couldn't get a Watchmen sequel up off the ground because everyone kept turning it down. No, I don't want to do it. Alan Moore doesn't think it's right. I don't want to do it. Alan Moore thinks it's right. And then he jumped at the opportunity. I would say Tom King's probably an asshole. But that's not the case here. That is not the circumstances which we're dealing with. Other people have done this work. So I think Tom King's going to do a terrible job. I think he's going to ruin the character. I don't think he gets a character. I almost guarantee it. He does not get any comic book character that isn't his own creation. But I don't think he's wrong here. But so that is my rebut, I guess. I think Jim Campbell and Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons probably have a damn good point and a reason to be pissed off. But I just don't think it's a Tom King. And that's all I got to say about that. What do you guys think? What are your opinions on Tom King working on this Rorschach comic? Is Jim Campbell correct? Are you on his side on this one? Do you think that I'm completely out of bounds here and I'm a complete moron for not really thinking about this correctly? Please, if you have a differing opinion, let me know in the comment section. If you agree, let me know in the comment section. Maybe you agree, but you don't agree completely, or maybe you agree even more than me that DC can do whatever they want, and Alan Moore can go pound sand. He shouldn't have signed the contract. I'm not in that part. You know, I think they probably should consult Alan Moore with the characters he created. But I also think, you know, if Alan Moore could go back in time, he wouldn't have created for DC Comics. And if you have original creator-owned stuff, don't take it to DC. They're only going to fuck you over. Don't take it to Marvel. They're only going to fuck you over. Like, I'm loving Philip Kennedy Johnson's The Last Guy. I think the visuals on it, the story is all great. I feel bad for him because when that thing gets picked up for a streaming TV show, he's going to get host. And it's all his creation. That's just the way I feel about it. I do feel bad for people that take their creator-owned work to DC Comics because you're just asking to take it right up the tailpipe. But it's not Tom King's fault. That's all I'm saying, folks. That's all I'm saying. Thank you for joining me today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and I'll talk to you later.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.